Welcome to episode 300 of the DFO Rundown, brought to you by Bet365, our sports betting partner, just in time for the 2024 playoffs. We'll be here with Bet365 to provide you all the news, analysis, lines, and betting options for the playoffs until one team is left standing in June. Bet365 today and use the promo code DAILY365 as we are down to 11 teams remaining in the quest for the Stanley Cup. And 3 more will be decided here in the coming few days. I'm Jason Greger. We welcome in Frank Saravalli. Man, Frank, maybe we should have just went shirtless for 300 today, just like, the great movie 300. What do you think?
I think that would represent a sharp drop in viewership and listenership.
Viewership, yes. Listeners probably wouldn't know, but the viewers
listeners probably would swerve off the road even if they heard me taking off my shirt. Just give you a little.
Yeah. Okay. There.
Yeah. No one needs that.
Yeah. Well,
happy 300 though, and sincere thank you to everyone who has listened over the years. It's kind of amazing. 90% of podcasts don't make it past 3 episodes. Obviously, to get to 300 is pretty awesome. And you know what? I didn't know you that well before we started this, and I've really enjoyed working with you and Tyler. And it's been a fun ride.
Yeah, no, it's been great getting to know you guys. It's always get a chuckle out of some of the text conversations as well. So. You're really eating your odd eating habits for sure. So things you guys like. I learned lots about the US that's very different than Canada as well. So we'll have a little bit of fun heading into the playoffs in the summertime as well. I mentioned 11 teams left. We have 3 series ongoing. We'll get to those in a sec, but we'll talk about the teams. I think the most obvious ones, I think everybody in the universe had the Rangers and the Hurricanes moving on to meet in the second round in the Metro. Florida, Tampa was kind of split. I think Florida was like a 65% on a lot of people's picks, but to do it in 5, Frank, was rather surprising to me. I guess let's start there, with that series. The Steven Stamkos situation, I don't see him leaving at all. The guy scored, he's been a point a game player for the last 3 years. He just turned 34. So, if you want to sign him to a 4-year deal at big money, I don't think he'd regret it. I don't think you'd regret it.
Look at what Joe Pavelski, who's also a free agent, is doing at the age of 40.
Yeah.
Why can't Steven Stamkos be an entirely solid contributor? 40 points, 40 goals, 81 points this year. I mean, he's not showing any signs of drop off. I think the bigger question for Tampa is philosophical. And it really comes down to what's your long-term vision and plan? Because I think for the very near short term, just look at their cap table and look at their picks. They don't have first-round picks next year, this year in the draft or next year. What's their incentive to be bad next year? I think you're signing Stamkos to a 2 or 3 year deal at $6.5 million a year, $7 million a year. It's a drop off or a discount from what he's been making, and you reassess after that. But so long as you have Hedman, who, by the way, is going to the Worlds, he's got 1 more year left on his deal. Kucherov has 3 years left on his deal. Point has 6.
Yeah.
Sergachev has 6. Vasilevsky has 4. As long as you have those guys, you're not going to be bottoming out. And yeah, you may not be a threat to win the Stanley Cup, but what happens if you get a year in which you don't get the Florida Panthers in round 1? I would subscribe to the theory in that case that you never know. But I could see the argument that someone might want to make that the Tampa Bay Lightning are just in the early stages of what the Pittsburgh Penguins are experiencing right now, which is they won back-to-back Stanley Cups, last won a round in 2018, and now since then have either missed the playoffs or lost in the first round. Tampa won 2 Stanley Cups and has gone backwards every year since, and is now out again in 5 games in the first round. What would you do?
You know what? It is a great discussion because you look at organizations who, I get why, guys won everything for their team, 2 Stanley Cups. As you mentioned, he's contributing still. Scored 5 goals in 5 playoff games. So it's not like he was, the guy who just scored in the regular season and then disappeared in the postseason. Far from it. And that's why, to me, it's going to come down to the term. I don't think the cap hit is the issue. Now, obviously, it's an issue as far as the overall cap for your team. But the mistake that's made for most of these teams is term that kills the guy. If you sign him to a 4-year deal, maybe the last year of the deal is a little bit dicey. But I don't see next year, I don't see the year after that being much of an issue. And that's where these teams get screwed over, is they're all about the term. And I get why the player wants the term. Of course, the player wants a term. But that's where the organization, and at some point, a good organization, which Tampa is being, is going to say, you know what? This is the reality. And you know what? If you're going to be good again and we'll sign you to a 4-year deal, we'll give you good money. Guess what? At the end of the 4-year deal, if you're still good, we'll sign you again. It's not a problem. But you have to understand the business side and players. Like I hear this all the time. Respect. Give me a break. Like, you make me want to puke in my mouth hearing that it's disrespectful to offer a guy 4 years at 36 million or 32, but because you didn't do it for 6, it's disrespectful. Like, seriously, stop with the lunacy of claiming it's disrespect because you don't want to lock in a guy long term when history has dictated time and time and time again. Term is what kills guys much more than the AAV.
Okay, but we can all agree that Julien Brisebois is not stretching to 4 years, right?
Yeah, probably. Although before, like I looked, he's 34, 35, 36.
And he's definitely not getting $30+ million.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know that he cracks 20. I think, like I said, I think he's going to be somewhere between $6 and $7 million, 2 to 3 year deal.
Really?
That's my guess.
Okay. Now, why would you say that?
Well, look at some of the other contracts that have been signed. Look at Tampa's cap table and structure. Look at what the pitch would have to be to Stamkos. You say you want to stay here. How badly do you want to stay here? Your career earnings are $99.55 million.
Yeah.
What's the extra $1 or $2 million at the end of it? What's it going to mean to you? Do you want to stay here? And this is the number. And if not, feel free to walk.
Yeah.
Put your money where your mouth is.
I'll give him credit if he does.
Frank, I of course, but I doubt he'd do it. This is why I think the whole storyline has been sort of overblown.
Yeah, like you think Stamkos is staying, even if an AAV doesn't matter to him.
He's already tried this. He's already gone and done what if the grass is greener on the other side? He already visited with the Toronto Maple Leafs. That scared him right back to Tampa, where, by the way, he won 2 cups, since has had a family and put down roots. I know everyone wants to, it's the sexy storyline. I'd just be shocked if he actually leaves. And part of the reason why there's been a lot of discord and discourse is because the Lightning haven't made an offer yet. He wanted this done last summer, heading into the season, and made it kind of clear that he was disappointed that they didn't engage at all. But then when you listen to Julien Brisebois at Locker Cleanout Day, he's basically saying, we're talking, we want this guy back, and I've let him know we'll try and figure something out soon. Does that sound to you like something that's going sideways?
No.
It doesn't to me.
No, yeah. I still think it gets done. I think shorter's better. I've said this, and
it's not even bad for the player either.
No, I've stated that for years. I think the top end guys in the NHL, and I know that fans might not like this, but the top end guys in the NHL, more of them should start following suit on what Austin Matthews did. He signed a 4-year deal. He got good term. I mean, he got huge AAV, right? For 4 years. He can do it again. Because what it does is it forces your organization to stay relevant and stay competitive if you want. Because if all of a sudden the team starts losing, then guys are like, you know what? Hey, man, I'm 31 years of age. I want to go to a team that's going to be competitive. It's just that simple. and the best players can still get their money. Like, you know what? I know the sports are different and the NBA guys play a lot of the minutes, but they get huge money, and they get huge money every few years because like the max term in the NBA is 5 years, right? Like, I think in the next CBA, they would be smart. And if the players were smart, when they look at things they would negotiate, term would be one. If there's other things they want, they should look at lowering the max term contract, because first of all, it's only a small percentage of guys who get it. And second of all, it's still going to benefit. The only guys who benefit from the long-term deals, Frank, are the guys who don't play up to their long-term deals. Those are the only ones. Ask Nathan McKinnon. Did Nathan McKinnon benefit from a long-term deal? Hell no. Hell no. He would have made way more money had it only been a 5-year deal. There's just the truth.
So our top 50 free agents board comes out today on dailyfaceoff.com, and it's littered with players who signed for too long that had an AAV too high that it's going to damage their free agency now. So it's not going to damage their wallet.
Yeah.
It didn't. And that's really, I guess, at the end of the day, what matters to them and makes sense. But how many guys are on this list that you're like, man, I can't believe that guy was making $4.2 million for the last number of years?
Yeah. Well, your list, like Sam Reinhart's a very interesting one, man. Talk about
before we move on to someone else, I just wanted to say this about Stamkos. I think the absolute blueprint is Pavelski. Look at how this lines up.
Yep.
And granted, when I say that, he left the San Jose Sharks.
True.
The only team he had ever been with. So take that part and maybe change it around. But hits free agency at age 34, signs a 3-year deal for $7 million per in Dallas, and since then has been on a series of 1-year deals. 2 years ago, it was $5.5 million with a $500,000 bonus. This year, it was $3.5 million with a $2 million bonus. He's made more money these last few years than he ever did in his career. And he's played on a good team well into his 30s, now into his 40s next year, and has shown no sign of slowing down. And ask him if he's comfortable playing on 1-year deals.
Oh, why wouldn't you? Keeps you motivated. Yeah, maybe he doesn't love it, but obviously doesn't seem to hate it either. Now he signed for $7 million, and that's why, like, man, I guess Tampa Bay, but maybe they'll play the game of chicken with Stamkos. But man, I'd be surprised if he signs for less than $7 million, because on the free agent market, on a 3-year deal, he could get more than that for sure.
Do you want to place a bet?
Well, no, I don't know enough about Stamkos to want to. That's not a bet. I don't gain anything.
Did you just say chicken?
Yeah.
I think you said
right.
Play chicken.
Yeah. Well, dude, I don't have to bet everything. That's not one I like to bet on. I don't care that much about it. Normally, it's when I'm passionate about something, I'll bet on it.
You know what? I know I'm in trouble in my house when my wife says, "Do you want to bet?" Anytime she ever asks that, she is 100% right, and you should just fold immediately.
Oh, well, maybe she's got you. Well, that's how she's got you thinking now, so she knows when to use it. She's in your kitchen, clearly. Just rattling
maybe
the old
I'm in yours.
Pots
maybe
and
I'm
pans.
in yours.
It's good. Smart lady. I like it. Now, some of the names out there for free agents, because as we mentioned, we're down to 11 teams. Other teams are going to start looking at free agency. Sam Reinhart's obviously a big one. Jake Gensel, some defensemen. Brandon Montour is rather interesting to me. Like Jonathan Marchessault. Does Vegas have money to keep him? Like, I think the Thomas Hertl trade essentially said we're trading Jonathan Marchessault. Or no, sorry, not re-signing Jonathan Marchessault. I just don't see how they have the money.
I don't either, especially after a 42-goal season. It almost for sure spelled that one of the original Golden Misfits is gone, unless they find someone else to move. But even looking at their cap table, I don't. There's no one else that I look at and say, oh, that's a prime candidate to be pushed out.
Look, a guy name who doesn't get a lot of talk, Frank, but I'm very curious to see what Brendan Dillon does. I think he'll be highly sought after by other teams if he doesn't re-sign in Winnipeg.
I have him at 34 on my board, just ahead of Ian Cole. I think the real surprise of the defense class this year is going to be the guy that I have at 11, Matt Roy. You just got to see him up close and personal in this first round series against the Oil. He defends exceptionally well, and it's not going to be a huge ticket, like big, but south of 30, right shot defenseman, is not going to pile up points for you, but really does a lot of things well and is steady, I think he's going to be in demand. That's one guy to keep an eye on. That, and the Kings are in cap trouble.
Yeah. Another guy, Frank, if he gets to free agency, who maybe is not a big sexy name around the league, but he's huge. Vincent Desharnais, what he's doing as a penalty killer and as a shutdown defenseman at 6'7", a guy who's just kind of coming his own. When you think of what teams at times, first of all, there's a shortage of good defensemen, so teams have overpaid them before. If he gets to market, I wouldn't be surprised to see a little bit of a bidding war, because there's just not many 6'7" defensemen who, and he's still pretty relatively young when it comes to games played, right? Like he's just over 100, and dominant on the penalty kill. He's become a good. He plays him and
what
Brett
would
Kulak.
you pay him?
Well, I know what Edmonton would like to pay him just because of their salary structure, right? Like probably 2.75 to somewhere around there. But I think he would look and think
for
that
how long?
Oh, he's probably only getting a 3-4 year deal at the most, I would think.
Man, I think that's exactly the type of contract that gets you in trouble.
You think so?
Mm-hmm. I just think he's really limited in skill set. His skill is his size. And
yeah, but it's a big skill at the right time, right?
It is, but there are significant limitations to his game. That's the way I look at it. I just think you're immersed in it, and I'm looking at it going, ooh.
Well, I just watched both of them, Frank, and I'll tell you, I saw it on your model. Matt Roy's making 5.5. If I get Vincent Desharnais at 2.75, I'm getting extremely better value on my dollar, because they're both, you know what? Roy's a second pair defenseman, not a first pair defenseman. And Desharnais is playing his minutes. Well, you look at who he plays against.
I don't care. I'm telling you, league wide, he's a third pair defenseman.
Well, I don't know.
When you pay those guys $2.75 or $3 million a year, 2 years in, you're going, I hate this contract.
Okay. Do you hate Brett Kulak's contract?
Edmonton didn't love it this year. They were thinking about trading him.
Wow.
That's point in case.
I don't know. Brett Kulak's been unreal for the Edmonton Oilers this year. The only reason they thought about trading him was because they wanted to think about making some room for Philip Broberg. But Brett Kulak, if you just look at
why? Hold on a second. Think about what you just said. They want to make room for Philip Broberg because Philip Broberg makes $900,000. That's why. It's not because they like. Well, they think that Broberg and Kulak might be close to equals, and one makes $2 million less than the other. That's why. It's all because of the contract. They like Brett Kulak. They don't love 2.75. They like Warren Fogle. They didn't like his contract.
Well, this year he actually had really good value for it.
You love Vinny, not saying you. They love Vinny Desharnais because he makes peanuts right now.
Yes.
They're not.
That's what everybody does.
They're not going to love Vinny Desharnais when he makes close to $3 million. They're just not.
Well, I think Vincent, if he's a second pair defenseman, which I really believe he will by the end of his next contract, that'll be a steal of a deal. When you're a second pair defenseman making $3 million or 2.75, it's a massive win.
The attraction in Vinny Desharnais is that this season he made $762.5. That's the attraction.
Yeah, but you say that you go around the league and guys like that, but you just what? Well,
but wait, so you watch and then they sign their next contract and no one likes them as much. Everyone liked Cody Ceci in Toronto for $1 million. They didn't like him at $4 million. It's the same principle.
Yeah. Well, if you're a second pair defenseman and you're making $3 million or $2 million,
he's not a second pair defenseman, but
they're gonna pay him because I think they feel he'll grow into it.
Okay.
Right? Like to me, he's Hakanpää. What's the difference?
Okay, what did Hakanpää make this year?
Well, yeah, because Hakanpää though
Hakanpää made $1.5 million, which is exactly my point, and which
but I'm talking about
projection this year. These are not my numbers.
No, I'm not talking cap. I'm talking playing time. What is Hakanpää in Dallas? Second pair defenseman.
He's second pair by the way they want to structure it. He's really a third pair guy.
What do you mean by the way they want to structure it?
By the person they want to play him with.
Yeah, but does he do the job?
Oh my God. So, okay. So let's, by your same metrics here let me just give you a hypothetical here. Is Pius Suter a first line player for the Vancouver Canucks? He's playing on their first line. Is he a first line player?
Well, he
That's the
hasn't played on their
craziest thing I've ever heard.
because he
Because
hasn't
Yanni
played on their
Hakanpää plays on the second pair, that he's a second pair defenseman?
Well,
No,
that's first of all,
that's
Pius Suter hasn't
insanity.
played on the top line all year, not even close.
Okay, pick your next player in the lineup. Is Nils Höglander a second line player? The answer is no. Just because you put them there doesn't mean that's what they are. Yanni Hakanpää might play on the second pair, but he's not a second pair defenseman.
Well, to me, I think your argument's different because if you play there all year long, you're a second pair defenseman. If you moonlight and you move up and down.
No.
Yes.
That's bullshit. Okay, so there's 32 teams in the league, Jason. Are there 32 number one centers in the league?
No.
Thank you. You just proved my point.
So Leon Draisaitl is only a second line center?
No,
Like, come on.
Leon Draisaitl is one of the 17 or 18 true, authentic number one centers in the NHL. Yeah. It doesn't matter where you are in the lineup. It's where do you slot on any team in the league's depth chart. Well, Yanni Hakanpää, not on the second pair. Vinny Desharnais,
Yanni Hakanpää is on one of the best teams in the league playing on the second pair.
It's because of who they're playing him with.
Yeah, well, we'll disagree. We're not going to go around in circles, but
he played 18 minutes and 39 seconds this year. That's not even second pair minutes.
Well, it's because he doesn't play in the power play.
Okay. No. We're going to go round and around.
You watch what Yanni but ask Dallas if they like Yanni Hakanpää, who he plays against, and the minute he plays. And he'll get $3 million and they'll be fine with it.
See, I disagree, because if that were the case, then Carolina would have just kept him for $1.5 million. And Carolina originally had him, and they're the king of finding true value and dispatching guys when you exceed what your true value is or the market advantage that they have. He makes 1.5 this year, paying Vinny Desharnais, who's not as good as Yanni Hakanpää right now, could be at some point, still has significant limitations to his game. Paying him 2.75 or 3 is a mistake.
Yeah, but Hakanpää, first of all, that's 3 years ago. He was in Carolina, and Carolina has like one of the deepest defense cores ever. So they were looking at different playing guys, right? Because my point about Hakanpää is he's a late developer, and that's what Desharnais. So we'll just watch in 3 years. You watch Vinny Desharnais will be playing top 4 minutes on a team.
Well, they're going to be a really bad team.
All right,
fact. We'll okay. Any team that I'm not slagging the guy, shitting on the guy. Any team that Vinny Desharnais is playing 20 minutes a night is not a good hockey team.
All right, we'll see. Now, we'll make a bet on that one. Looking at the series that are left, Toronto-Boston. Toronto gets a huge win without Matthews. Then you have Nashville staves off elimination. And then you have Dallas, the team finally winning at home. So Dallas is up, Boston's up, Vancouver's up. Do you like those three to close the series, or do you think someone's coming back in one of those series?
Oh, I wouldn't be shocked at all to see Vegas win Game 6 and go to 7 games. I know the Stars are in the driver's seat. And they've definitely been the better team in the series.
Oh, yeah.
I think the other ones get closed out. I mean, look, Joe Wall stood on his head. His goal saved above expected in that game.
And Jim Montgomery hated his team's game. Like, he was still ranting about it yesterday morning.
It has not been an entertaining series. But I just don't think the Leafs are out of the woods in that for the 4th time in 5 games in this series, this team has scored 2 goals or less. Like, until they until they prove that they can score in the playoffs, like they're dead in the water as far as I'm concerned.
It's hard to argue that. And the fact that for whatever reason, they can't win on home ice. Like 1-8 in their last 9 home games. Like, That's ridiculous. I don't understand it. How you can't find a way to win at home. Like, at least be 500 for goodness sakes. So that's the now. What about goaltending? We're going to see Allmark or Swayman. Swayman's played 4 or 5. They said they wanted to rotate. Are we seeing Allmark in game 6? I think you have to.
Yeah, I would go back to Allmark. But to be fair, I said this before game 5. I said, I don't care what happens in game 5. If there's a game 6, I'm going to Allmark. You have to. You need to A, keep these guys fresh for theoretically what will be a long run, and B, this is how they've done it all year. To deviate from that is to deviate from your structure. That's why I really liked what I heard from Andrew Brunette. You know, I'm back home now, but I've been on this Nashville, Vancouver series the whole time for the first 5 games. And after winning game 5 in Van, the question was, what was your message to the team? And he said, quote, just be us. And I think there's a lot to that when it comes to the playoffs. Do what made you successful. For the Preds, it's relentless forechecking. For the Bruins, a huge, at least 10 plus points of their standings this year, 5 plus wins were in their goaltending. Their goaltending was so far above everyone else as a tandem, short of Connor Hellebuck, who we'll get to in a second. That was the strength and backbone of their team. To only go with one guy now, even though Swayman, there's no real reason, his play hasn't dictated a reason to make a change. You gotta stick to your guns.
Well, now speaking of making change, the Vancouver Canucks Nashville series, you were covering it. My God, that might be one of the most boring series, a low event series I've ever seen.
Do you know how much shit I got in the Vancouver market when I said that out loud on Canucks Conversation this week?
Like,
I said, I've been covering this league for a long time now. I've been to a bajillion playoff series. The actual now game 5 that's as entertaining a game
that was the
as
best
you're
game
going to see
of
that
the
has
series.
No score heading into the 3rd period. The Vancouver Canucks had 20 shots on goal and 13 were high danger chances. I mean, that's about as good as it gets. But it's the fact of the matter is that through 5 games, the Canucks have 91 total shots.
Dude, they're averaging 18.4 shots a game. In the regular season, Nashville allowed the 10th most shots per game. This is not a team that was like a juggernaut defensively that you're really struggling just to get shots on goal against. And, you know, you've got like Elias Pettersson has 7 shots in 5 games. No, him and Garland, I think has 6. Like those are guys who had 200 plus shots in the regular season, and they're not even getting shots. Like you can't, you know, and it's funny because everyone's like, well, it's their PDO. I'm like, no, it isn't. It's not their PDO, you dummies, because their PDO is still 2nd highest in the NHL. They're not getting any shots. Their shooting percentage is actually still pretty high overall. They're just not getting any shots on goal. And we can talk about block shots, Nashville, great job, but the amount of missed shots they've had is staggering. But just the lack of consistent getting pucks on net, filtering through, like game 5 was the most entertaining, no question, but it has been a slog. And, you know, I'm curious to see.
But they paid for it. The Canucks opened it up a little bit and they paid for it because they got sloppier in their own end. They made dumb decisions. They iced the puck at poor times.
Yeah, okay.
They had poor penalties.
Yeah. But icing taking penalties really, to me, shouldn't dictate your ability to move the puck and skate. You're taking penalties because you're not skating usually, right? Like the other team's quicker and you're in chase mode.
Yeah, but they've defended pretty well in this series, all things considered. And they've had to.
It's been an awful. Like, I'm sorry, Canucks and Nashville fans, but that's been one of the most boring series I've ever seen. And you covered it live, so you would know.
Trust me. I've been look. There have been thrilling moments. The comeback in the final 3 minutes in game, like the comeback
3 minutes, right?
The 3rd period of game 1 was good. Like there were some really good, memorable stretches, but there was also some dreadful hockey played in between.
And what are you hearing on Demko? Is he done? Is he coming back? What's your thoughts?
No, I think he's a possibility for round 2. I'm told he's a possibility for round 2. Not I think. If the Canucks lose game 6, part of it will depend on how Artur Shilovs plays, and he's been really good.
Yes.
I think they would go back to Casey DeSmith for game 7.
Game 7. Well, it'd be nice to get a game 7.
Slight groin strain for DeSmith.
Oof.
And because
it's a tough position to play coming off a groin strain.
Well, yes, but because Demko was already out, they didn't want to trot DeSmith out for the next game with a groin strain because then they'd be out both of their goalies for a while.
Yes,
so they wanted to give him as much rest as possible in case they need him again. And when you had a 3-1 series lead, it made sense to go back to Shilovs because you're playing with house money at that point. And he played well.
Yeah, for sure.
Dallas,
Vegas, then we'll get to Tyler.
Oh, I was going to ask you too. What do you think? What should the LA Kings do?
Oh, well, the number one thing they need to do is whoever their new head coach is, right? Whether it's Hiller, is to scratch the 1-3-1. I'm sorry. They sat back far too often and got murdered by it. Right? I know that the 5-on-5 goals were close, but they got some really lucky goals. Another one last night off the stanchion and goes in front of the net's wide open net. Right? They had 2 off defenseman skates. A guy breaks his stick. They have a 2-on-0. They didn't generate as much offensively as people think. Their special teams, shockingly, were atrocious considering they were both top 10 in the regular season. That just kind of shows you how good Edmonton's power play was in the series. But if I'm LA, I got to look, okay, we got to change how we play. They got some skilled players, but the 1-3-1 is in the NHL today. I don't think playing passive works. I don't think you win with it. Maybe you can win in the regular season, Frank. You can't win in the playoffs. It's been proven 3 years in a row. You haven't got out of the first round. There are only one of 3 teams in the NHL in the last decade who don't have a playoff series win. They haven't won a series since they won the Cup in 2014. Detroit and Buffalo are the other ones, and Buffalo's never made the damn playoffs, and they have the same amount of series wins as the LA Kings. So to me, they got to make change there, and then they got to figure out what they're going to do with Pierre-Luc Dubois. It is clearly it's not working there. He was like their 4th line center in this series. You noticed him more so when he took penalties than anything else in the series. So I don't know. They got to get a sports psychologist with him, try to figure it out. They could
figure it out.
Yeah, they could go the crazy route, Frank, and buy him out because he would only be a 3rd buyout.
I don't think that's crazy at all.
Yeah, it's something to consider. I know it's nuts, but you'd buy him out at 1/3 instead of 2/3, and it's still a lot of money to tell your owner, hey, you're going to pay a guy $27
million. No, it's not. It really isn't. You are saving 31. So what's remaining on his deal is $47 million in salary and 11.5 in signing bonus.
Yeah, so 58.
What you're spending is 15.8 to go away, and you're saving 31.2. This is the last time you'll ever have this opportunity because then the script flips, and what you're saving is 15 and spending 32. You got one chance to do this, and that's it. I in some ways, I'd be surprised if they don't buy him out.
Yeah, and if he does,
the cap hit is 1.6 next season, 1.5 the year after that. All of these things are better than 8.5. And then there's a couple year period of time where it grows to 3.8 before dropping off to 1.1 again. And when it's 3.8, the cap should be $100 million then.
Yeah.
So instead of 8.5% at the time, it's going to be 3.8%. I think you have to just swallow hard and pull the trigger.
Yeah. And then I'd be curious what teams would look at, does he need a show me contract? He'd be a fascinating free agent, Frank. He would suddenly, I'm guessing, go to your top 50 because he might be a real bargain deal for someone. Because I doubt anyone's
he might be a bargain deal, but I don't know how anyone could watch him this season or in these playoffs and say that he's going to help you.
Yeah, you're right. Well, you're right. That he might be a 1 year, $3 million at the most type of deal. It would be a fascinating decision, but they got to.
Should they change their general manager? I saw a stat last night from John Rosen who said that over the last 15 drafts, LA Kings had 2 players that were picked in the first and second round in their lineup.
Yeah, which is
They've
shocking.
made some really poor decisions.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the Faber trade. Fiala's been fine. The contract has been fine, but deciding to trade Faber over Spence, Faber over Dursey, Faber over a bunch of those guys, my God.
Well, you look at the Dubois, you mentioned, so they traded the 3 players, right? Velarde, Iafallo, Kapari, but they also had to get rid of Dursey just to bring in. So it's basically 4 guys out for Pierre-Luc Dubois. That traded itself crushes your team. So,
and kind of the amazing part is through it all, their goaltending wasn't an issue after betting.
Yeah, they went on the 1-year deals, and they got no goalie signed for next year. So,
but
that'll be.
I get where they're at, and I actually don't hate it. I wonder if, in the end, what is the thought process on how teams spend on goalies? Do you like what LA did, or do you hate it?
Well, it didn't help them really at the end of the day,
But
right?
it
Like
didn't
Cam
hurt
Talbot.
them. How
Well,
you're not when you sign a total. Okay, so Talbot had a $1 million cap hit, and he got an additional $1 million at 10 games played. So that's
so
2. And David Riddick, he was initially started the year in the AHL. He has a cap hit of $875. So when let's call it $2.9 million between the 2 guys. When you spend $2.9 million, you're not really looking for goaltending to help you. You're just looking for it to not hurt you. Yeah. And some would argue that maybe the Kings are onto something.
Yeah,
maybe they got it right.
But they had the worst goaltending in the series. Like Skinner was better than their goalies. So, and he makes 2 point. Now he's a young goalie, but he makes 2.75. So,
guess where the Kings finished in save percentage in the regular season?
Oh, they were, I think, top 5.
4th.
Yeah.
So but, did they probably made the right call?
Yeah. Well, they made the right call if you want to make the playoffs and then lose in the first round. Sure.
I don't think they lost because of Cam Talbot. And in fact, I don't even know that I would have pulled him for the 4th game.
Yeah. Well, no, they lost.
Honestly, they lost because of special teams. They lost because their roster isn't nearly as deep as the Oilers, and they lost because they don't have the talent that the Oilers have. They didn't lose because their goalie is a lot worse.
No, it's fair as far as the goaltending thing. So will they go another year with 2 guys on 1-year deals? Maybe. Yeah. But, and having the big goalie doesn't help either. We'll get to Hellebuck, but let's get to Ty Yaremchuk first. Ty, how you doing?
I am good, gentlemen. You
Spicy
guys
edition.
Yeah, I was going to say the top arguments you guys have ever had. I still think the best is the one that you guys were screaming at each other about Erik Karlsson. That one's probably top tier. But you guys spending episode 300, 11 minutes arguing about who is a second pairing defenseman that's real classic Frank and Jason stuff.
But it's also, here's what I love about our show. One, we really respect each other. So like, even though Jay and I disagree, like I have a ton of respect for him. And 2, this is what I hope to authenticate in the show is exactly a conversation that 2 people would be having over a beer in a bar, because hockey talk for the most part is so serious that I love that we can just actually have the debate.
Oh yeah, it's great. Yeah, like if you agreed all the time, it'd be boring.
Yeah, like your guy.
Right. We'll just see.
Don't worry, I wrote it down in the new notes tab I have.
Yes, perfect. Let's keep notes. We'll see. Revisit that in 2026.
But yeah, your guys' show prep was, let's start with the teams who have advanced and go from there. And you guys did 24 minutes before you talked about a team that advanced. It was pretty good. Anyways, let's get into buy or sell, brought to you by Bet365. You guys my first one was actually going to be buy or sell, new coach and new GM in LA next year. And I know you guys kind of just touched on it, but I'll throw it out there anyways. Frank, buy or sell on that?
I would buy. I think it's time. I think for a team that hasn't won a playoff series since 2014, you can't give me the excuse that holds zero water for me is the same one that Toronto Maple Leafs fans have been perpetuating for the last 8 years is, oh my God, but we ran into the Bruins. And then it was, oh man, it's the Lightning. And then now it's, geez, the Florida Panthers are in our way in the Atlantic Division. At some point, You have to be the team that everyone else is afraid of. And the LA Kings have made some smart moves. They've made some really dumb moves. And I don't see a path for them to be in the upper echelon of their division. And therefore, I think it's time for a reboot.
I am going to sell on both because I'm not sure Luc Robitaille is there yet to get rid of Rob Blake, but I think they'll go with a different coach, which is unfair for Jim Hiller because he kind of inherited and we're like, hey, you stay in here and kind of play the same system. So they kind of
do you know for certain that they dictated to him that that's what they wanted?
Well, that's fair. Maybe they didn't, but then if he played the same system, then that hurt him either way. So.
Well, that's what I was going to suggest is, hey, bud, you were given a blank slate. I think my guess is when they make a coaching change, they say, hey, you go do what you want to do. If he made the choice to continue to play that way, that's on him.
Yeah, because all I know is Drew Doughty late in the season was like, I don't really like the system we play, but that's what we play. Like, there's your Hall of Fame defenseman. You don't need any more guidance. He doesn't like, and he loves defense, but even he doesn't like it. So move on.
My conspiracy theory on the future of Rob Blake, and you talked about maybe Robitaille's not ready. Maybe that's why he had to go the interim route with Hiller and didn't get to hire a new coach. Maybe it was like, hey, if you're making a coaching change, I'm not letting you pick another guy on a 3-year deal. We can get through this year and talk about it at the end if it works. Maybe. I don't know. Right now, there are currently 6 teams without full-time head coaches in the NHL, or permanent head coaches. It's the Kings, Devils, Sharks, Kraken, Sens, and Blues. I'm going to say at least 2 more join that list by the time the offseason rolls around. Buy or sell, Greggs?
Well, I'm going to sell because I don't know who. Like, it's stunning to me that Marty St. Louis is now the 6th longest tenured head coach. Then you go down the list, and Spencer Carberry, who, by the way, hasn't even been on the job a year because he got hired last May 30th. He's 16th. So I don't know who else they can get rid of. So I'll just say no on that. I'm basically like, I don't know if there's a job that's more that has less job security right now than NHL head coach. Like, it's crazy the amount of changes that have gone on. So I'm going to sell. I don't think there's going to be 8.
So my job is to point out which other vacancies might come.
Yeah, well, like Toronto, if they lose, is an obvious
2 more. I said 2. Do you think it'll be 2, buy or sell?
Yeah, I think I'll go Sheldon Keefe 1, and I will go. Like, we're not including the interims, right?
No. 2 on top of what's currently there.
So I think there's a real question to be asked about Rick Bowness. Does he want to do it
That's fair.
after the year that he had personally? There seemed to again be some friction between the Jets players and their coach, and not saying that's unhealthy, but just he was really on them saying, like, we've put in a structure and you guys aren't playing that way. And I think some of the pushback was like, that's not how we think we could be successful, or that's how we want to play. That's another one. And then I think you've got to ask the Mike Sullivan question, given what's been percolating out there, which from my own reporting would suggest that at the bare minimum, there's a disagreement ongoing right now between Mike Sullivan and Kyle Dubas on who his assistant coaches are going to be for next season. I think Kyle Dubas wants to make changes. I think Mike Sullivan is resistant to that. And I think there's more or less been well, if you want to make these changes, then you might want to change me out. That kind of a suggestion. And so, look, I think a lot of teams are kind of biding their time right now, or being patient in terms of their process, specifically a team like New Jersey, because they want to see if Mike Sullivan becomes available. And there's even been enough speculation or smoke to suggest, hey, is there a possibility that at the end of the day, New Jersey and Pittsburgh could even work out some sort of arrangement or trade in order to make something like that happen? I think that's probably pretty far-fetched. But at some point, this situation in Pittsburgh is going to be decided one way or the other. Either Mike Sullivan's getting his way, they find a compromise, or Kyle Dubas is getting his way, and the coach with, arguably the most power in the league, given his ties and backing by Fenway Sports Group, their owner, there's a fascinating dynamic playing out, and there's a reason why that's been speculated upon.
Oh,
juicy.
Kyle Dubas being in a power struggle, that's so unlike him, Frank.
I know, it's really weird.
What about this situation? You guys didn't bring it up. Buy or sell Rod Brind'Amour, Canes head coach next year. Frank?
Buy. Look, I appreciate the reporting because I do think that there's been a lot happening behind the scenes, and has there been some discontent in terms of how the process has been handled? Yes. I don't think Rod Brind'Amour is coaching anywhere except for the Carolina Hurricanes. And whatever the squabble is, whether it's market value, perceived market value, whether it's assistant coaches' contracts, whatever it might be, at the end of the day, Tom Dundon's not stupid. And he has said before that he wants Rod Brind'Amour to be the coach of his team forever. I don't see Rod Brind'Amour leaving Raleigh to begin with, just from a personal perspective. And I wouldn't be shocked if he's not coaching in Carolina, that he's not coaching anywhere. But franchise icon, clearly one of the best coaches in the league, definitely one of the most consistent teams in the league. I can't even envision the path for him to not be coaching there next year, regardless of whatever the cost is.
Yeah, he's there. There's nothing else to add. I don't see him leaving.
There you go. That is a wrap then on a new edition of Buy or Sell, brought to you by our sports betting partner for the playoffs, Bet365. You can use the promo code DAILY365 to get in on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, remember, it's never ordinary at Bet365.
Love it. So we have 3 series. Might see some end tonight, Toronto, Boston, then 2 games on Friday. I think we could see this. This could be a situation, Frank. We go to Game 7 on Sunday, where we see the round 2 start before, round 2 start before round 1 ends. It's happened before. I think there's some teams. You look at TV markets. You look at the Saturday afternoon, Sunday afternoon in New York. I wouldn't be shocked at all if the Rangers Carolina starts on the weekend, and possibly starts, even on Sunday afternoon is the early game, and then if the late game is Sunday night in Vancouver, I won't be surprised. We've seen it before. I don't think they want to wait too long to get this second round going.
I think Canes Rangers is going to give it a run for the money.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I think there'll be some tight series. Florida, man, I like Florida against either Boston or Toronto. And I like Edmonton.
I agree. And I like Edmonton against either team from the Canucks spread series. So if I were to order them in order of interest, I'm going to go Rangers, Canes 1, Stars, Avs 2, Florida, and whoever they play 3, and then Edmonton, Van. If it's Van, the Canadian matchup is exciting, but
first time since '92, those two teams with me, those fan bases don't like each other, so I think it would add to it. To me, it's always a little bit more fun. Get people losing their minds on social media over it. It adds a rivalry. Edmonton and Vancouver. There used to be a lot of disdain when Vancouver had Burrows and Kessler and BX, and they were great at just stirring the pot, and plus the Oilers sucked. So that now probably made it worse, but they really haven't had a lot of animosity between those two. So I think it might be good. It's obviously one of their closest rivals geographically between the two, but they haven't really had a rivalry in a while. So I'm a big believer that most rivalries are stoked in the playoffs. So having those teams meet for the first time in 32 years would be a good thing.
Yeah. Let's go. Hey, this second round, we said the first round, it wasn't exciting, but this second round might be some of the best hockey we've ever seen.
Let's hope so. Frankie, we'll talk about it on Monday. Have yourself a great weekend.